Hello and welcome back to the EUROVOXX Podcast, the place where we will be discussing all things Eurovision. Coming up today, we have the first two entries of the Eurovision 2023 season. We'll be recapping everything that happened in Albania and Ukraine. And then afterwards, we will be previewing the ST semi-finals from Estonia. And our third act will be revealed this weekend as well in Belgium's Eurosong. But we now first come up to our guest here. It is another Eurovox member. It is everyone's favourite Canadian Eurovision fan and the unofficial leader of the Constructor fan club. It is Stu, everybody. How are you, Stu?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. This is news to me that I'm part of the
unofficial.
Was it the official or the unofficial one?
The unofficial Constructor. When I came up with that joke, I was like, "You're either going to say, you're either going to be shocked or say, what do you mean unofficial? It's the official."
Yeah.
There's a payment and everything. But
hey, I mean, it would be very much like being an OGA member because you have to pay for those. So, like,
exactly,
why not?
Yes.
Yeah, and it would be money to a good cause, being my enjoyment of Constructor's music.
I can only imagine what the welcome's like. It's just loads of people clapping in unison like this to the sound.
Totally. Yeah, it's the national anthem. We start every meeting with, a listening of Incorpore Sano, and then the rest of the triptych EP. See, like, I'm already riffing on ideas. Maybe this really should happen, you know?
I've given you an idea.
Yeah, exactly.
We meet up every weekend. But we'll start off with 3 questions, as we always do on the show. So first one, describe your first Eurovision year.
I guess officially my first Eurovision year would be 2018. I was living in Spain. I had decided to just kind of leave Canada for a year, and Spain is where I decided to go. Specifically, I was living in Barcelona. And I suppose, like, because I was in the area, you start getting those targeted ads. And so I was getting hints about Eurovision all throughout. And then one night I went to this club called Moem, and this song comes on with a woman making chicken noises and using a sampler. And I'm like, wow, this is really unusual. So I asked my friend, like, because I'd never seen the song come on at the club before. And it also plays the music video. So you're actually, obviously, like, you're not just hearing it, you're seeing it. So I asked my friend, and he was like, oh, I think this is the Israeli entry for Eurovision. And so I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And like, up to that point, I had known about Eurovision for a few years, but really nothing, like, you're just not exposed to it in the same way when you're not in Europe, and especially somewhere in Spain, where they, even in their sort of like darker years, they still are really passionate about it and love it. And
yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And so anyway, that happened, and I was like, okay, so I should probably pay attention to this. My grandparents are actually originally from Austria, so naturally the first entry that I checked out was Austria's, and I was really surprised too, because
good year for them.
Great year for them,
yeah.
And not the kind of genre that I would associate with Austria, which, now that I've gone through Eurovisions in the past, like, Austria actually has sent Seoul quite a few times, and it's just not something that I would have expected from, like, knowing my grandparents and knowing I don't know, all the touchstones that I had of Austrian culture. So yeah, I watched Eurovision for the first time in full that year by myself in my apartment. But it was actually great because I got to form my own opinions. I didn't have anyone kind of in my ear being like, this is really kind of crap, right? So and as you said, like, it was a great year for Austria, because I didn't fully understand how the voting went. I thought that Austria had won by the end of the jury voting. And then they're like, no, we have this whole other thing that happens. And then it obviously wasn't quite as good of a result, but still, like, it was great to see. And then, I kind of caught the bug from there. And ever since then, I've been, it's kind of gotten under my skin, and I haven't yet been able to get rid of it.
No, I mean, my story is very similar. Like, so obviously being a Brit, and from Europe, I watched it from a lot earlier age. So my first Eurovision was 2011. But after watching 2018, I became a Eurovision fan. And funnily enough, the first 2 entries I watched, because I started watching it late, was Lithuania and Austria. Those were the 2 that, like, hooked me in with
Okay.
their stagings. Ironically, because obviously Ukraine performed first with Melvin. When they brought up
Mhm.
this goth guy in the green room, I was like, oh, when's he performing? I was like, oh, did I miss him? I was like, oh yeah, there
Yeah,
was. I was
yeah.
like, yeah. There was three others before then.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like, especially because I had Eurovision kind of explained to me before, and people were like, it's very over the top, it's very queer,
Oh
like
yeah,
it's not to be taken seriously, and like there are still elements of that there's I mean elements that still exists, but I wasn't expecting it to be such a spectacle with
same.
all the different technologies that they had behind it, and like there are certain performances that really jumped out at me as being like, wow, this is really professional. And the very first one was Slovenia, who I think was like third in the running order
Yes.
that night. And then obviously towards the end, like there were a few in between, but Cyprus, come on, Cyprus with Fuego, and obviously like huge fan favorite. But I remember just watching it and being like, wow, this girl is like all the way there. She is a pro, and so like they conveniently left that part out when when telling me about what Eurovision was. So as somebody who works in television, it really impressed me, and now it's kind of it's something that I always look forward to see how far the boundary is going to be pushed, and what other kinds of music, what kind of unusual music will be grabbing my attention, what are the more like conventional pop melodies that I'm going to really like, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the second question: what is your favorite Eurovision entry ever?
My favorite Eurovision entry ever is Soldi by Mahmood, Italy 2019. Um, there's just something about that song that every time I listen to it, it's like I'm listening to it for the first time. And even like, if it's been a bit of time and I haven't like, because obviously, I listen to a lot of music in and outside of
Yeah.
Eurovision. So when I come across it in like, when I've got like my library on shuffle, or like, for example, when we just listened to the ESC Top 250 for New Year's Eve. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm always blown away by it. Just the kind of innovative approach to music. There was I can't remember the name of the journalist, but it's on the Wikipedia page, and the way that he described the approach to a chorus is that it's almost like uh, musical cubism, because it's not one individual section that's the chorus. It's kind of broken into three parts with the lead up, and then you have the part with the clapping, and then the come va, come va, come va. Like it's just it's the kind of thing that really excites me, and it introduced me to Mahmood as an artist who I can't get enough of. Obviously was a big fan of Brividi as well. So yeah, like
Did you get to
that.
see that live this year?
I did, and
Ah,
fortunately I also got to see oh, do you mean like in person?
yeah. At the show was he? Because I obviously you went. I know you went to a semi-final.
Yeah.
Was he one of the artists that performed that day, or was it a different one?
So it was the family show that day,
Oh, okay.
and it was, yeah. So he was not there. Neither of them were there, and neither of them did an actual performance of the song. So no, I didn't get to see it live. But I
Ah,
thought you
okay.
were being a bit cheeky, because obviously the televised version of that performance is not so great vocally.
I mean, I was
But
just being curious. I'm aware that I forgot it wasn't as good live.
oh yeah, 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 that's so. Um, but at the very least, like because we were there as press, we got to see the jury show, which was actually a pretty good
Oh yeah, yeah.
vocal performance. Which too bad the majority of fans weren't able to see that, because it did actually make the
It was
song
definitely the
come
best one
across.
out of the
Yeah,
however many they performed. It wasn't that many compared to everyone else, was it? With
true,
Blanco.
true.
And then the final question. So last episode, I just asked my guest what their favorite pizza slice is, and I thought let's get a bit more creative with these questions. So I thought let's ask the previous guest for a question for the next one without knowing who it is. So this question has actually come in from Jess. Didn't know you were on the show.
Okay.
I said it could be about anything, but she has gone Eurovision. If you could pick any Eurovision but song to perform on stage, which one would you pick and why?
Okay, so I feel like there's a certain side of me that would say, like, if let's say that I had all the vocal chops to pull off something and do something really impressive, um uh which one would it be? I mean, it might be Soldi, because it's my favorite, but I don't know. Let's say it. So if I had the vocal chops to pull it off, then Man, I would do Euphoria because
Oh,
it's just such a incredible song. Incredible song with incredible staging. I like the reality is that no one can perform that song like Loreen does.
no.
But if let's say that I could live up to that,
Yeah, in this
then yeah,
hypothetical
that would be the
scenario.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
excellent choice.
But if I'm choosing a song based off of my actual vocal abilities, then it would probably have to be something that's a lot less complicated, and maybe I would go for like Euro Nero
Oh no,
because
no.
because at least I know I could do it. Um,
In my head, I was thinking, "Oh, don't say Dustin the Turkey." I was like,
well, I mean that would certainly be within reach, but I mean, like I would have a lot of fun with it certainly, but no, it's going to be Euro Nero.
So let's get on to what's been going on in Eurovision. So much stuff has happened since the last episode. Junior Eurovision happened. Congratulations to France. Great victory. If you want to go back and see how me and Jess did in our predictions for that contest, feel free to listen to our first episode. Spoiler: we didn't do great. But also, as a Brit, well done to Freya for all she had to put up with that week with illness. And the UK won a televote, an online vote, which is incredible. And of course, in adult Eurovision, many national final songs have been revealed. Snippets from Malta, Norway, full songs from Romania. We've got Croatia coming up. It's all really kicking off very soon. But let's not dwindle about the future. Let's go a little bit to the past. And we've had 2 entries be revealed for the contest in Liverpool. And the first one is from last year's champions, Ukraine. And that, of course, winning Vidbeer 2023 was Torchy with Heart of Steel. Don't get how you feel. Get out of my way, Guess I got So, Torchy, a duo from Ternopil, Ukraine. Previously, they took part in Vidbeer in 2020, finishing in 4th. Actually, I believe they topped their semi-final. I believe it was semi-final 1 or 2. Was it 1 or 2? Any idea?
It was 2.
It was 2,
It was
yeah.
2 that year, yeah.
4th. So, they've returned. They've won the whole thing. Stu, what are your thoughts on Heart of Steel?
So, firstly, like I know it's been said a few times, and it's been a little while since Vidbeer has ended. But the fact that this national selection had gone ahead, is just I feel it's important to recognize that with all that's going on in the country, that they were able to do it. Obviously, like certain sacrifices were made for the broadcast. They built it in a subway station so that they wouldn't have to worry about air raid sirens and having to disrupt the whole show. But yeah, so big compliments to the Ukrainian broadcaster for that. But with regards to our winner Tvorchi, I think that they delivered. They really they brought a performance that was easy to remember. As far as vocally, it was good. It was one of the most visually impactful of all the songs, and it's still. Again, recognizing that the production itself had to minimize in order for it to actually happen is, it's tough to make anything visually impactful, but they did it. And I think that the expectation with Ukraine, especially because for the last few years they've been choosing things that have this blend of Ukrainian folk sounds with modern production. This might have taken people by surprise for it to be the winner, because at a superficial level, it doesn't sound Ukrainian, and there's no Ukrainian lyrics in it. But no, I think they're a good choice. Not my personal favorite. I think that there's going to be the impression that we have now will change, because they are going to do a revamp of the song.
Oh, are they?
And yes, they will. Yeah, I recall reading that they're trying to kind of optimize the song for the stage, because the version that exists right now, I think, is better suited for listening at home on streaming platforms and whatnot. So I think with regards to the song, there are certain things that work really well. I think the hook is really great. Lyrically, it's not reinventing the wheel, but there's that theme of resilience there. And it seems that obviously there were a lot of songs that addressed the war, and in pretty direct ways, whereas this one, it doesn't specifically talk about the war, but with any kind of song of resilience, you can apply that meaning. And I've seen a lot of people say that they feel perhaps that the voting public wanted an escape. They wanted something that wasn't too on the nose, because obviously that's their day-to-day life. So yeah, ultimately I do think that it's a good winner.
Yeah, to be honest, a lot of the stuff you said there, I completely echo. First of all, the production level for Vidmir, considering the circumstances, was absolutely incredible. I can't remember who said this in the Eurovox chat. It might have even been you. But like any other national final coming up has no excuse for like
Yeah.
poor production, poor quality, anything like that, considering what Ukraine had to put up with and still have to put up with, and they came up with a really good, like good level production national
Mhm.
final and staging. In terms of the song, I am happy that it's getting a revamp, because I think at the moment the staging is definitely better than the song itself. The
Mhm.
song itself, I think, yeah, it works well for studio, but I think without the staging, it doesn't leave much of an impact to stand out amongst, like, it's going to be against 25 other songs. So yeah, a revamp just to give it a bit more of a punch, give more moments, I think is what this song needs to get Ukraine high up on that leaderboard. Obviously, they're automatically in the final. They don't have to worry about qualifying. Not, I mean, it's Ukraine. They don't have to worry about that anyway, usually. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a solid entry. It's not my personal choice again, but I like what you said about the fans wanting somewhat of an escape, because once I like heard that thought or theory, I was like, oh, I get it. Because from the
Mhm.
outside, we all think, oh, that to represent their culture and to really like pull on our heartstrings, they should send something that has some links potentially to the war to get optimal like thought and like eyes on there. Ukraine didn't want that. They wanted an escape. They wanted something that was like, no, we're going to forget about the war for a second, and we're just going to pick a song that makes us empowered, makes us feel strong, but without referencing it direct, which I think is fantastic. I think all the power to them on that, and it got high with the jury as well. It's not one of those where did bad with one or the other. Both were
Mhm.
excellent.
And to be fair to the many other songs that participated and were a bit more direct in their addressing of the war, like it was actually a pretty close televote result.
Yeah.
When they published the results, there wasn't much of a difference between like Jerry Hale and Kreutz, who were second and third with the televote, and then of course Kreutz had won the jury vote with
Yes.
a song that was incredibly emotional. So obviously there are lots of people who resonated with those deep hurtful emotions that are relating to the war and what life is like. But it was just that the one that came out on top ultimately, the one that got the majority vote, was a little bit more discreet about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair, the two you mentioned were my personal two favourites, Sherry Howe and Cruz. I thought both were excellent entries and would have been great to go. What I love in Jerry Howe's like intro at the beginning, how she said that vegan was basically she said vegan wasn't a very good song back in 2020, and I was like, thank God you you figured that out, and you've actually grown into more of an artist and like this style, because yeah, I think she's had a massive glow up in the 2 years. And isn't it weird actually? The top three were all from 2020 artists as well from Vidbeer. How do you see this doing in Liverpool?
I mean, especially because there's going to be a revamp, it's hard to say with any certainty. um, we have to talk about the fact that there has been this perspective, which I still think is totally unfair, that's essentially writing off the Ukrainian entry
Yeah.
because of last year, because of the, I mean, like, if we're being honest, the record breaking televote that Ukraine got last year, it absolutely had to do with, there being sympathy
Oh
for
yeah.
the war. One thing I want people to know going into this Eurovision is that in 2022, Ukraine was very much still seen as, like, I don't want to say a helpless victim, but they were seen as being in kind of a very desperate situation. Going into 2023, with all that's happened in the war and the fact that they've been fighting back and holding on for so long, I think that people are going to have a very different perspective, and I don't think it's going to be as much about sympathy, even if the majority, or a portion of the show, is going to be celebrating Ukraine and Ukrainian culture. So I don't think it's going to be topping the televote with a rock, like a record setting, or even like just like something that's close to what we had last year. But if I had to judge the song as it is right now, and kind of think about the idea that the staging is going to be bigger, I could say that it could land in the top 10.
Yeah, I'd have to go somewhere similar. Top half, top 10, I think. Yeah, I think the point with like the war, from my perspective, I think it partly depends on how the rest of the show in Liverpool goes. In terms of,
Hmm.
obviously, yeah, you got to represent Ukrainian culture. How much of it is going to be a? And now, look, I've got no links to BBC. God knows what they're going to do with the show, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, if the BBC ha- put too much emphasis on focusing on the situation in Ukraine rather than making it about making it a as much as a normal Eurovision as possible, then I could see there being like a subconscious link in people's minds to once again support Ukraine through their votes. That's my only concern. I want if Ukraine win, I want it to be the people thought they had the best song. That's sort of my perspective on it. But
Hmm.
yeah, without that, if the Eurovision goes how I would like it to and how many fans I think would like it to, then yeah, this still would be top half, top 10 in my opinion. So let's move on. About a week later, we had our second entry, and no surprises, it's a December song from Albania. And they are being represented by Albina and Familia Kamedi with the song Duye. So Albina is from Peja in Yugoslavia, now Kosovo. She rose to fame placing fourth on The Voice Albania in 2014. So after going for more like a bop dance style in 2022, Albania definitely gone more to the ballad style that most fans are known for. Stuck with the female at least, they're consistent on that front. So last May was 2018, I believe.
That's
Yes, it
true.
was.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Stu, what are your thoughts on Duye?
So, when this song debuted at the festival, because this year they did things differently, where we didn't get published versions of the songs leading up to the show. It was definitely a very memorable performance, and I think that there are certain check boxes of I don't know, Eurovision performances from the last 20 years that made people pay attention to it. Especially, I think of the opening, with the vocalizing, the very intense
That's in
vocalizing,
any
and
good
kind
song
of.
nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know about it nowadays, but there's certainly a lot of songs that come with Eurovision that start that way. In any case, like, yeah, it was a very impactful song. Albina definitely holds the reputation that Albania has for sending really powerful voices to Eurovision. Um, I I'm really kind of, well, to borrow language from Jess, I'm on the fence about the song. um, because it is impactful, but the thing that's kind of annoying me, or not really annoying me, but that's kind of distracting me at the moment, is the way that it looks on stage, because Albina is there with her family.
Yeah.
And the presence of her family is significant to the song, because they're talking about the kind of issues that divide people, and like if a mother and father get divorced, there's obviously a conflict, and the children kind of bear the brunt of that, or they, everyone's kind of affected, and it can cause people to take sides. Anyway, that's it's a very chicken scratch level description of the song. But in any case, the presentation of it is hard to get into, I find, when you're watching it. So it's like living up to the expectations for being impactful when listening to it, but when watching it, I think there's going to need to be some pretty decisive direction, because like Albina is not firing her family. They're all going to be there, I'm pretty sure. Who
It's
knows?
Albania, you never know.
Well, I I don't know what to make of that comment, but I think at least that level would be beneath Albania. Um, I think, much like we've seen in the years before, where Albania revamps the song, like that's been a pretty consistent thing. And I feel like the revamp always elevates the song in some ways,
Yeah.
even if like there are certain changes that don't fit my personal tastes. At least the production is always elevated. The kind of like punchiness too, the parts of the music that really kind of grab your attention, I think always work. So I think that this will probably be the same thing that we get this time around, and it will be a better idea of how the song will be performed at Eurovision, because what we saw on the night of FIC was the live orchestra, and the orchestra sounds very different to the studio version of the song. So yeah, I mean, so that's kind of why I'm on the fence about it. I don't dislike it, but I'm just a bit reluctant to I don't know, decide how I feel about it and how I see it doing.
Yeah, again, you echo a lot of what I sort of think about this song. The revamp is key here, because one thing that it's hard to judge with Albania and Italy is when you hear the song in the national final, because it's the live orchestra. So it's hard to know how the production is going to sound when you're basing it off that, because in Eurovision, obviously, we don't have live orchestra. So the song will sound different. I think for me, the reason this stood out for me when I was watching night one of Festivale de Kenges is, I think for me this year the national final was a bit weak. There was a lot of similar style songs, and not a lot of them went anywhere. They sort of they stayed consistent in one place and didn't try and progress along. With Albina's song, when I listened to it, I was like, I remember this. Like, it stands out to me, and it's something that clearly connects with the Albanian audience, and it's something that I was like, okay, I'm now paying attention to this rather than being quite passive, like a minute into half the songs this year. So that's why I think it won. It stands out, and also, obviously, in Albania, there's not a lot of deviation in terms of like style. This is very Albanian style. So in the Eurovision concept, as they usually do, they will stand out for being quite an ethnic sound. So I definitely do think this has potential. Not a guaranteed qualifier by any means. And yeah, the revamp is key. One note I will say, I didn't watch the final, so they might not have done it then. But if during that break they just do that step in and out thing that they did during the first one, then you can immediately call this a non-qualifier, because you need to up the like staging and the production from FIK, which I think they already knew anyway, because on the stage in FIK there's not a lot you could really do, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch it, you can tell that, like Eurovision did many years ago, it is inspired by Sanremo, and it's funny because somebody made a comment that's like, "Oh, well, this is just like Sanremo at home," and it's like, yeah, that's what it is. They watch Sanremo and they're like, "No, we have to have this ourselves." But no, you're right. Like on that kind of stage, the presentation for television is kind of secondary. What they're really focusing on is the orchestration, and I mean, I think that it does really speak to the power of a song when it can stand out that way, rather than having to be supported by other visual elements, because obviously, like, that's just part of what Eurovision is nowadays. But when you have a song that is really just like, all the focus is on the song and the performer, and you're able to reach people in that way, I think it does say that there is some magic there. You are able to reach people in a way that doesn't require, like in sort of a Salvador Sobral kind of thinking, the music is feeling, not fireworks idea. So yeah, like it's more of a challenge, but I think that what you said about the little dance move. Yeah, like I think there needs to be some really solid direction from whoever's going to be doing the creative direction for Eurovision, and it's going to have to communicate the idea in a way that is a tad less melodramatic, I would say. Just a tad,
It's Eurovision, Stu. Less melodramatic? That's bizarre. That's not possible. But yeah, I think... do you think this will qualify? If you had to say now, do you think this will qualify?
As it stands now, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really all I can say. But obviously, there's a lot more to find out. So it's not dead on arrival. But if this were to show up in Liverpool the way that it looks now, then I would say no. Yeah,
I think the key things that they need to do between now and Liverpool is make sure the message is clear, and also in the revamp, just tighten up the song a bit. It's a bit messy in places. You just need to smoothen it out, make different parts of the song clearer, and this definitely has a chance. It's not intelligence music project or whatever they were called, where everyone immediately knew that wasn't qualifying.
And now it's time for...
Okay, we gotta go.
30 seconds.
So now we have another edition of OK, Gotta Go 30 Seconds, obviously inspired by the Golden Boy himself from 2015. So in this game, I have 43 countries randomly assigned a number between 1 and 43, of course. These are the 43 countries that took part in 2018, so all fairly recent ones. Stu, what you will have to do is you will have 30 seconds to name a country's entry in reverse chronological order. You can either give me the title or you can sing or hum a famous part of the song, a memorable part. You can't just sing like part of the verse and say that's that's the song. You've got two lifelines. You can either do a country restart, where if at any point you don't know a song and you're really struggling, you can pick another number immediately. Don't say I'm using this and then pick another number. Just do it immediately, because I appreciate you can run out of time doing it. Or you can do a year check, where basically you can clarify what year you're on and at any point during if you are stuck. You can only use both of these lifelines once. And then there are only two other rules that you need to know is songs from 2020 do count. And if you run out of entries for a country, for example, like Australia has not got an infinite amount of entries, you can immediately pick another number / country and start again. This won't count as your country restart. Are there any questions?
I think I'm ready.
So, for anyone that didn't see the last episode, the current leaderboard is in first and last place with 1 point. Is Jess. You've got to beat 1. Your time.
Watch me screw it up still.
I really, yeah. So your time will start as soon as I say the country, and your time will end when you hear the following.
Okay, hit the end.
So, Stu, can you give me a number between 1 and 43?
24.
24. So, Stu, you will have 30 seconds to name as many entries from Denmark. Go.
The show. Øv os på hinanden. Yes. Love is Forever. Higher Ground. Where I Am. Soldiers of Love. The Way You Are. Cliche love song. Only Teardrops. Should Have Known Better. What was 2011? I think that was Romania. How did you do?
New Tomorrow was the entry we were looking for 2011, by the way.
Oh, yeah. That's that. It makes sense that I would forget about that one.
Hey, that's one of my favorites from that year. It's a weak year, and that's one of the good ones.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can tell you, Stu, that you scored a whopping 11. So that puts you on the top of the leaderboard.
Hey!
A whole 10 points ahead of Jess.
About that.
And that concludes the second edition of OK, Gotta Go 30 Seconds. So now we go on to what is happening this week. And up first, we have our third song coming up. This one is going to be from Belgium in Eurosong, who in Turin were represented by Jeremy McKissay with Miss You.
I'm gonna miss you now. Promise I won't miss you now. I'm gonna break through now.
So that was Jeremy with Miss You, obviously getting through to the final. Back-to-back years, Belgium have got to the final. So they've reverted back to a national final format for 2023, the first time since 2016. 7 artists will be competing with 2 songs each. At the time of recording, we do not know, A, the full versions of any of the songs, or which ones the artists have picked. So this is just in case we end up talking about one of the songs that has already been eliminated by the time this gets published. Just a little caveat in there. So, Stu, after hearing some of the snippets from the songs, what are your initial thoughts on this national selection?
Oh man, and it's always so hard to say anything when you're going off of snippets. Like I think snippets are really only they can't really give you the full picture of whether or not a song is good all the way through, but they can give you a pretty good picture of when a song is bad.
Yes.
And as far as how that applies to this selection, I don't think that there are many bad songs. I don't think that there are all that many that are all that great, to be honest. But there are a few that I am really looking forward to seeing. As far as artists go, both of Gala Drago's songs have really caught my attention. I really even like the way that they staged it in this kind of, bare bones presentation where it's not meant to be a full on visually fleshed out performance. But yeah, like just there's darkness, there's a kind of intimate energy to it. She sings with a very, dark timbre of her voice. So she's one that I'm looking forward to. The Starlings, of course, we've got a familiar face in there, Tom Dice from 2010. And although I think both songs are decent, the one that stands out to be a bit more is Oceanside. It's one of those songs where I just think the hook is really engaging, and it's one of the few that I'm really curious about hearing the full version, whereas there's a few others that I could kind of do without, as far as like what the snippets have told me. And then there was one other by Amira called The Carnival that seems pretty fun. I don't know if that really has a shot at winning, but obviously, like, you can't really say that about any of these at this point. But I remember kind of seeing the energy of it and seeing the way that she was dancing and kind of giving life to the song that had me curious at the very least.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to know how these will do with just snippets. What I tend to do when it comes to snippets is I don't look at what the song has, I look what the song could have. So my thought process with these 14 songs is, if this is the major like wow moment that's being displayed in any of these songs, I don't think they stand a chance. This needs to be for all of them like the middle section or like the beginning chorus in a sense. It needs to get bigger from here. So that's what I sort of look at. I'm like, oh, if this is the middle one, then the end could be really good. So yeah, there's a couple that have stood out for me. Oceanside's one for me that I really like as well. I like the hook. It's got a nice, warm, familiar sound. And for me personally, I prefer this a lot more than Roller Coaster. That one just doesn't have as much memorability, and also "Life is a roller coaster" is quite a cliche lyric. It's
Yeah.
not one that is reinventing the wheel or anything. Gala Drago is especially in Tinquite. Excuse my French, to quote Destiny, I suppose, is another one. That's probably the standout one for me because there are 7 artists here. Some of them know their style and some of them are sort of on the fence. Gala knows her style. She has pinpointed, this is how I want to present myself. This is the style of music I want to do. And this is how I'm portraying it to the audience. And it really shows in this selection. And I think this song in particular has a much more engaging initial chorus in the end. As I said, if this is the end chorus, I'm less interested potentially. But if this really builds and this has so many like ballad, like beautiful, the instrumental's stunning in this song, I think, from what we've heard. So if this builds, this could be a standout moment for Belgium, in my opinion. And the other one that a few people have been talking about, I believe it's top of my Eurovision scoreboard, is Shireen with Samuele Pa. Very fun, very upbeat song. And Shireen's another one which I think also knows her style. She's very fun, very upbeat, very confident on stage, and I think it's one that televoters could gravitate towards while not being completely against jury votes. So those are the 3 that I'm definitely on my radar for potentially winning the whole thing. And overall, I think this is a decent selection for Belgium. One thing that I can say for sure is they've really focused on the production levels. All of these songs do feel full and complete. Sometimes to the detriment. They're sometimes a bit too what's the word?
Too polished?
Too polished, yeah. The Sweden effect, if you like, potentially. But there's a few gems in there which I really think could stand out. I hope they make it to the final on Saturday. And yeah, Belgium have a good shot of continuing their qualifying momentum. Stu, if you had to pick again, I know it's snippets, but if you had to pick one song you want to win from these 14, which would you say?
I'll go with the the one from Galadorgo with Tinkiet. Yeah, we're gonna have to practice that one to say that one. But that is the one that I would choose for.
Only if it wins. We don't have to worry about it if it doesn't win.
That's true. But I'm gonna put. Let me put it this way. I'm going to look forward to practicing that in the event that it wins.
You know what? I'm going to say the exact same thing. There are 5 preview shows throughout the week. They've already started by the time this is recorded. And the grand final will be on the 14th on the Saturday. So let's move over to the other national final happening this weekend / Thursday, I suppose. It's Estonia. Now, I'm not going to lie, we're not going to do semi-finals often, but we're still in the early stage of there's not many finals going on at the moment. So, and also SD Lao is quite a big national final. A lot of people follow it. So we thought it'd be great to cover at the moment. So the 20 songs got revealed, I believe, late November, early December. It was early December, I believe. What are your thoughts on the overall quality of SD Lao this year?
So on the first listen, at the time we were kind of juggling 2 national finals that hadn't happened. It was Ukraine and Estonia, and I think because I was paying a bit more attention to Ukraine, and I felt like, obviously there was a lot of very interesting things going on musically with the war and forming that music, that I was a bit more drawn towards that. And this, it wasn't really kind of ticking the boxes that I have for the music that I listen to. But when I listen to everything again, I actually think that this is a very strong year for SD Lao, and I've always admired the way that they incorporate all different kinds of artists. You've got a bunch in there that kind of do the talent show circuit. You've got a few in there that are making their debut, and a number of people who definitely come from a more alternative scene. And when I was listening to these for the second time, I was actually really drawn in lyrically by a lot of the songs in the selection. There's still some that like I could definitely do without. One thing I've noticed about SD Lao, with a sort of exception of last year, is that they always have something that's in there that is kind of batshit crazy and uses
hang on. They had crazy last year. It just got eliminated in the quarterfinals.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, they had their one.
Yeah.
And because they did quarterfinals, it didn't actually make it to the show. So this year it's back in the form of unicorn vibes. Putting that song aside, overall, I'm very impressed. And even though, I think the songs that are grabbing my attention are not the more typical Eurovision fans would really like and celebrate, but I recognize a lot of quality here, and I hope that that's also recognized in the score as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. SD Lao is always one of my favorites. For whatever reason, there's always at least one song, usually more, that I gravitate towards. And sometimes SD Lao has had some dud years in terms of the song quality. I think off the top of my head, 2021 comes to mind. I don't think it was the strongest year. But
I would say, if I can just jump in, the thing about 2021 was that we knew who would win from the time that the score was, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I do think that is a flaw in how Estonia does its selection, doing the super final with 100% televote. Because there is such a disparity, there is often such a disparity between the jury and televote, that when you finish 8th with the jury, as long as as long as the vote is still split and you can get a top mark with the televote, then you're pretty much set. Which, and that was definitely a song that I would say was dead on arrival. Speaking about Ukusaviste's The Lucky One. Other people disagree, but I think that there were a lot of better options that year, and it was just a shame because we were getting so excited about them, but we couldn't really fall in love with them fully because we knew that in the end it was going to be Uku.
I think a lot of people already knew who was going to win. That's probably partly why. I'm not saying that artists didn't try. I'm just saying it did. It was just a weaker year, I think, on that front from SD Lao. But last year it was one of, if not my favorite national final, and this year a lot of strong songs, a lot of good production songs, like songs that you listen to and are like, wow, is this from SD Lao? No disrespect to previous years, but like compared this year, I think production has been emphasized, and I think that's fantastic. So what we've done for the semi-finals coming up on Thursday and Saturday is me and Stu have both put together the 6 songs that we think are going to qualify from each semi-final. Combined, me and Stu have agreed on 10 of them. 5 from semi-final 1, 5 from semi-final 2. That's a complete coincidence. It's 5 and 5 split. And these are the 10 songs that we agree with.
How can we find any reason fighting in this house of glass? When it breaks, it's gonna never since the day you came around. I'm a prisoner and there's nothing I can do, not a thing to get you out. All these thoughts in my head make it all such a mess, but you keep coming back. Thought you're smarter than that. And afraid of the monsters creeping in my bed. I wanna have a mirror, not inside my head. Baby, I'm fooling around and get. Now I know that we were never meant to last. After all the time that's passed, you only know, let's face it, nobody can break it. I just keep on waiting, you keep on waiting. I sing, we can sit in silence. We still.
Our love is like a bad philosophy that came over you, came over me. We went too far from our reality.
were my lighthouse, guiding me home. I knew you like myself, from the skin to the bones. Might have something you still need. If you're alright, you can call me up. We can say the things we should have said. 'Cause I'm free. Freedoms, you will find a way to begin again. No more time to waste, so don't play pretend.
So those were the 10 we agree on. Funnily enough, I promise we did these rankings before the odds came out on EurovisionWorld.com, but these are actually the top 5 from both semi-finals. Of course, you just heard Yannick, Ollie, Andreas, Bedwetters, Annette and Freddie, Inga, Elisa, Cici, Carlos Ucareda, and Alika. Stu, any thoughts on these songs, ones that stand out to you that sure qualifiers could progress further, do well?
So I would say for sure qualifiers, when we were looking at semifinal 1, the only one that I had down as a definite qualifier was Annette and Freddie. They, of course, are returning faces from 2020, and they came third that year. They had won the jury vote and had made it to the super final. I think that this song, it's just a very classy, well-written soul song that is going to get the same amount of love. Maybe it won't be the favorite this time around, but I can imagine it being heavily supported by the jury and also getting a decent televote score too, because it did get a decent, their first effort got a decent televote score too. So that was really the only one out of semifinal 1 that I was like, this is definitely going through. And it's not that the other ones are like necessarily weaker, but it's just when thinking about all the possibilities, I just felt like there's so many ways that all these could go.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the ones that we agree on at least, Ollie, Bedwetters, Yannick, and Andreas. And the one that we disagree on is I have Elip as my qualifier, whereas you have Ka as yours. And I actually switched in Elip at the very last minute after having watched some rehearsals of hers. And it, like, being perfectly honest, it might just be that I'm a big fan of the song and I really like the overall style of everything, especially like with the music video and in the production of the song. You mentioned to me that because it's second in the running order, and even though I kind of disagree about running orders having such an effect in a shorter show, like one with only 10 songs, you have said that statistically speaking, the second, the song that performs second in Estilao doesn't tend to qualify.
It's only qualified once.
Try...
It's only qualified once since 2017.
Okay, well, there you go. I'm going to ignore that and hope for the best for my girl Elite, because I think her song is really great. And then as far as the other ones go, there are others that appeal to me in the songs that I think are not qualifying, like Neon Letters and Maiko, the song that's in Japanese, Tokimeki. I love that song, and I would like to think that it could qualify as well, but I suppose that when thinking about the Estilaos that I've seen in the past, this one does seem to be the song that we tend to see, where it's like really well produced. It's by a very young and up and coming artist, and then when we actually see it, like something falls apart live, whether it's performance or staging or both or something like that. But again, I love this song and I would love to be wrong about that. And yeah, I don't know if there's much else to say about the predicted qualifiers other than it's just, I don't know, like a gut feeling where, and it's interesting that it was a gut feeling because it was also very much in line with what the odds have to say too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from semi-final 1 perspective, yeah, obviously, I am actually fairly confident on the 5 that we agree on that are all going to go through. Like Yannick, I think is well produced in his opening. Ollie song, as long as his vocals are fine, it's an amazing entry. It's actually my favorite national final song so far of the season. Spoiler, we are recording this before MGP Heat 1 songs are fully released. So Ulrika might take that spot in a couple hours, but who knows? And then Bedwetter's also very well produced, and they seem like very assured act. I think will do well. And then Andreas, very popular in Estonia. And Annette and Freddie, similar to last time. Estonia has a soft spot for this like jazz style song. We saw that with Minimal Winds last year as well. Having, in my opinion, the best underdog national final story ever. Like scraping through every time to then get second is incredible. So yeah, they're the ones I've got. In terms of the like last spot, with Car instead of a Leap. I just worry a Leap song won't translate live. I really like Pretty Girl as well. I love the vibe of it. It's just one of those where it feels like those style of song might just fall flat. With whatever reason, vocal, production levels in SD Lau, any of those. And Car seems a little bit more popular in Estonia as well. And his song is a bit more rounded for me, which is why I've got that personally through. So yeah, so on semi-final 2, the 5 we agree on, Inga, Elisa, Cici, Carlos, and Alika. I'm fairly confident. I mean, Alika is a favourite to win the whole thing. I'm fairly certain she's at least making it to the final. Carlos has a very well-produced song, in my opinion. Juries will love it, at the very least. And at least one of these like typical ballads go through in SD Lau. Cici, another fan favourite with, in my opinion, her best song in SD Lau so far. Elisa, I mean, if it's fans liked Fire, so I can imagine a lot of them were like Bad Philosophy. It's written by Stig, well-known composer as well. And Inga, consistent qualifier in their own right as well. So here's where the differences are in semi-final 2. I have Malik going through with Toju, and Stu, who do you have going through here?
I have M. Else with So Good at What You Do.
Yes. So from my perspective, now MLs I probably prefer out of the two song-wise, but when you look at this lineup, it feels too obvious that the final slot goes to MLs in terms of like the other 4 songs in the national final, the semi-final. Sorry. So I sort of put one in that it's like I feel could be decent live and could connect with enough of an audience to scrape through. Malik is one of those where if it got through, I think would come bottom 3. I don't think it would do anything, but it's got a good Estonian sound. It's fairly consistent and well produced. And I think it would do slightly better than MLs, who I am slightly worried it has the kind of song that just doesn't translate live in SD Lau half the time.
Yeah, and honestly, like I do agree with your points, and between the two songs, like I could really go either way on both of them. Like speaking about my personal preferences, but then also just the kind of things that you addressed with there being a lot of questions about which ones will come out better on stage. And I do think that is possible for MLs to just not really for So Good at What You Do to not translate very well. But at the same time, like I think that this song has one of the best hooks that we have, and I think that as long as the vocals live up to it, I don't think you need like a very complex stage concept with it. It should also be mentioned that a songwriter on this team is pretty familiar to us. He's the recent participant who represented Estonia last year.
Stefan. Yeah.
Stefan. Yeah. Obviously, and like name recognition doesn't really have much to do with that. But I don't know. I think that the song itself is one of the strongest that we have. And then when it comes to Milik and Tuyu, I still can't figure out because obviously they have that line in the chorus, that do you know what I mean? I don't know if that's like supposed to be a pun, like a bilingual pun with do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway.
I know what you mean, yeah, but who knows?
Yeah. Music video is so much fun. I love watching that video. It's really, really which is funny. And I think the only thing that makes me doubt this a little bit more is that we've seen these indie songs come, like, like indie rock songs performed by indie rock bands at Estila. We've seen them come through and just be kind of ignored by really both the jury and the televote, sadly.
Yeah.
But obviously different group, different song, could be totally wrong about that. But yeah, like honestly, even if MLS does miss out, or if it happens to be one of the other five, because there are certain ones that I could probably do without personally. But,
yeah, some of them are definitely not going through in semi-final two. I'm just going to say
no,
that.
but I mean, well, sorry, do you mean for Eurovision if these were to win?
No,
because I'm talking about the qualifiers.
Oh, the qualifiers. No. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
And I mean, like, I love Inger, but I don't think that this is his best song. And I think that ultimately, is not really in a position to win. So if Inger did miss out, I wouldn't be too heartbroken. And then Elisa's song, I just find it to be very predictable and, the kind of song that we've been hearing for a while. But I do agree, like, with what you said, especially going off of last year and how she was able to make it to the super final. It could be just good enough for this year too.
Yeah, obviously, as we said, this is not our personal top six each. This is who we think is going to qualify. I'd imagine our top six would look very different. So, Stu, there's a decent chance we ain't going to preview the final because, spoiler for anyone that's not seen the calendar, there are 7 national finals happening that weekend and there's like 4 before. So, spoiler for content coming up on the podcast. So I'm going to ask you now. We don't know the qualifiers, so this could backfire horribly, but probably won't. I want two answers from you: who you want to win and who you think will win Estila.
So the song that I want to win is Carlos Ucarete's "Whiskey Won't Forget." I keep coming back to this song. I think that it's so well written, so well produced. I love especially the fact that it's kind of like a country style ballad. Like, there's a little bit of a twang in his voice. It's very driven by the acoustic guitar, and it's got solid lyrics. It's not like, super amazing reinventing the wheel lyrics, but it's told in a way that it is engaging, and that would be the one that I would like to see go to Turin. Or sorry, to Liverpool.
Go to Turin in the tour.
Gotta be, yeah. Well, maybe whichever of the two actually doesn't go, they can go to Turin and we can have a party. But
just every runner-up goes to Turin instead.
Or come to Toronto instead, so I don't have to do the travel.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. But the song that I think will win is Alika's Bridges. Very popular artist. The kind of dramatic ballad that I think Eurovision fans really like. And I think we're expecting this to be pretty well performed based on what we've seen from her already. And yeah, like it again, because it doesn't have to be the top choice of the jury, it just has to be liked enough. And I think that if it makes that, I don't see any reason to think that this wouldn't make the top 3. And then once it's in the top 3, it's set,
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the one I want to win is without question Ollie with Venom. It is my favourite song of the national final season so far. One of my favourite national final songs ever in studio. It's just my ballad / rock is perfect for my taste. And yeah, I if this is genuinely, if this can be performed except as well as it potentially could be live, this could give the song I think will win a run for its money. I think this is in real contention. The one I think will win is similar to you, Alika Bridges. It's a very good song. It's a very good song indeed. I mean, you could tell by the songwriter Walter Hardy. He's got a good track record with Arcade and Toot Universe. And yeah, Alika very popular. Great voice live as well. I've seen a couple of her performances. And yeah, all she has to do, I think, with how popular she is just get to the top 3. And with this style of song, I don't really see any trouble in there. So while I would love Ollie to go to Eurovision, not emotional Ollie from Gala's song, this Ollie, I think Alika is the front runner at the moment. But we have to see the live performances. The semi-final will take place on the 12th on Thursday, and semi-final 2 will be Saturday the 14th.
And now it's time for Unpopular Opinion.
So now it's time for the second edition of Unpopular Opinion, the segment on the show where it's a safe space for Eurovision fans. We all have varying opinions. Some people like, some don't. And we just want to get our guests to get out the way what they don't like potentially about Eurovision, a specific thing that they are not keen on. So, Stu, I'll be honest, when I asked you for an unpopular opinion, you text back immediately saying, "Oh, don't worry, I have one." So this is something this is something you're very confident on. So, Stu, without further ado, what is your unpopular opinion?
Funny enough, it's not the one that I was thinking of at the time.
Oh,
It's a completely different one. So with my unpopular opinion, I wanted to go a little bit bigger.
Okay.
And although like we're obviously having a laugh right now, it is actually a bit more of a serious one, and it addresses fan culture and political entries. And my unpopular opinion is that I think that fans should be embracing political entries more than they actually do. And I was inspired to speak about this because of the recent selection that we saw in Ukraine, where obviously the war is not just top of mind for Ukrainians, it's their lives. And we saw that reflected in the music itself. And while I still think that the vast majority of people who follow Eurovision, like I do think that for the most part people are open to whatever the songs are, and people really celebrated those songs. You still see these certain people who have this very quick knee-jerk reaction to anything that is not, like safe from politics, anything that has any suggestion of the world is not okay and I need to let you know about it. There's a real reluctance, and it's like, oh no, we can't choose that because it's too political, or like I can't support this because it's too political. So in Turin, I attended a conference called Eurovisions. And it covered a variety of topics and included a number of speakers. And one of them was Jacopo Tomatis, who is a musicologist, and he spoke a lot about Sanremo and Italian music, and kind of all the connections to Eurovision music. And he made a very interesting argument about 2019, about Sanremo 2019, when the winner from that year was Soldi by Mahmood, my favorite Eurovision entry. Yeah. And the songs that was selected over, he specifically mentioned Il Volo, because Il Volo represents what a lot of Italians seem to see as a caricature of Italian culture, and is not typically, it's the kind of music that is not typically appreciated. These are sort of the effect of what he was saying, not his exact words, but that kind of music is not as well appreciated within Italy, but is beloved outside of Italy. And I think when we're talking about Il Volo at Eurovision with Grande Amore, that's a perfect example of that, where people loved Grande Amore. And to other people, to people from within Italy, that's seen as like quite grandiose and tacky and not an accurate representation of what Italy is. So he described that moment as a symbolic moment of transition where the new Italy won over the old, because of who Mahmood was as an artist, the kind of music that he was bringing forward, and the fact that it was like there was a change. There was a change in the attitude of what could be appreciated by the rest of the world, because that year Italy came second. And then the following year, like not the following year, but the following Eurovision edition, because 2020 was canceled, they ended up winning the whole thing with a rock song. So I see a lot of parallels with 2016, where guess who the eyes were on at the very end of Eurovision? Ukraine and Russia. What Russia was bringing was the caricature of what a Eurovision song is. It's all melody, all like catchy melody, really over the top staging, really over the top vocals, and really like some like the perfect idea of what Eurovision has been. And what Ukraine sent was something that was a lot more raw, a lot more true to, I don't want to say true to reality, because all music is true of reality, but like there was a very important story being told there. And when that won, there was a lot of writing it off because, oh no, this entry is too political. It only won because of politics. Fast forward to 2022, when the war happens and we see Jamala perform at the selection in Germany. And like, obviously things are very different. The circumstances are very different. And people are saying, oh, I didn't get it then, but now I get it. And it's like, really, it took you that long to get it? Maybe you should have been open to it the first time, And so it's sort of part popular opinion, part TED Talk. But
get your notes.
But no, I do wish that there would be a change in attitude, and I just think that it's not 1956 anymore. I understand that the EBU itself, to a degree, has to put stipulations around who they allow and who they don't allow. But ultimately, I think that the fans can change, and the fans should evolve, because these are the stories of what people are going through right now. And if there's an opportunity, especially because we're choosing these songs with the opportunity to wave the flag of their country and put a moment in the history books, that should be celebrated, not ignored. Because I think that when it's ignored, when it's ignored, it's ignorance, right? It's not really appreciating the world for what it is. And I don't think that we'll be able to think of Eurovision as this kind of escape from the really tragic stories and the really harsh realities of what the world is. And obviously, I hope that with all that's going on, that Eurovision still survives, and I don't have any reason to believe that it wouldn't, but I do think that there is going to be a bit of a shift with what's going on now. I don't think that Russia will be coming back in the next little while, because it would just be way too unpopular. But yeah, I think right now is a pivotal moment for Eurovision, and I think that kind of paradigm shift in the fan base is necessary.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot there. A lot of it I will agree with. You were probably generalizing, but what I will say is I don't have a lot of issue with political entries as a whole, but I do think some of them should be stamped out. For example, Belarus 2021 was rightfully stamped out for being political. I think it just depends what you mean by political. If it means by a representation of hope and a cry out for unity, like Ukraine have been doing last few years, they haven't been you could argue Jamala's 1944 was not the nicest to Russia, to put it lightly, but it wasn't degrading or putting down a certain group of people in a sense. I think there's certain entries where, to avoid creating a divide or portraying a message that is really harmful, then yeah, you can't have all political entries in. I do think the EBU needs to cut them out.
Yeah.
One where I'm sort of on the fence on is Georgia 2009. I can understand why it was not put in. Oh, I did not mean to say that. That's complete coincidence. I can understand why they didn't allow it, mainly because it was in Russia. But at the same time, it's a viewpoint. I can understand why Georgia said it, but at the same time, there'll be the debate where it's in some ways similar to 1944, where it's not the nicest to Russia. I think it's all about the way you present it and what message you are putting across. That's where I think, as a whole, but a entry should not be immediately discredited because it is political. It's about what message it portrays, whether political or not. That's sort of my thought.
Yeah. And that's sort of a part of my argument / TED Talk / unpopular opinion that I didn't quite mention. But you're right. There should be room for nuance, because what shouldn't be happening and is still happening is this knee-jerk reaction saying that's political, that's not Eurovision, take it away, to use another. I literally wasn't thinking of Jan Olasan when I said that, but anyway.
I just thought that. Clock that.
I almost split my side, actually. But no, that's absolutely true. Sure, because obviously you have Australia participating still, and they could send a song that's how Britain has decimated my culture. If they had an indigenous person, yeah. I mean, you could do that, and certainly you could have the discussion about, is that the best way to put forth that message? And I mean, ultimately, I think good musicians and artists will know how to kind of work around those things. And even, all throughout the years where the politics rule has been perhaps a bit more enforced, there have been artists that have subverted things a little bit, kind of hidden messages away in the text. And I think that's always going to happen. Art will find a way to get the message through. But, again, it's really just about the knee-jerk reaction and the idea that I think that this is an opportunity that could be really beneficial, so that we bring Eurovision closer towards, the music that everybody in the world wants to hear and is excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the second episode of the EUROVOXX podcast. I hope you had an amazing time listening to us. These are going to get a lot more frequent as the national final season goes ahead. Next time up, we're going to be reacting to Belgium and previewing some big national finals. For example, Norway, Spain are going to be happening the next time we do this podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stu, thank you so much for being the guest. You've been amazing to listen to for however long this podcast ends up being. And yeah, we hope you join us for the next time. See you later. Bye.
Bye.